Hello and welcome to this review of my Corsair K100 keyboard. This keyboard was a commercial donation from Corsair after I requested one to review. I did an unboxing of it recently. Now, to many of you it won't come as a surprise that I asked for one of these. It comes with contactless switches and I've been raving about those for years now. Now, Corsair have traditionally been one of the most stubborn users of Cherry MX, not wanting to dip their toes even in the clone market, but I'm excited to see more and more mainstream manufacturers embracing the possibilities of contactless switches. That said, there is also a version of the K100 which costs the same and which comes with Cherry MX Speed instead of these OPX optoelectric switches. But if you buy that one, you really don't understand mechanical keyboards. I mean, if you want to buy a linear keyboard, Cherry MX is not the thing you should be looking at under any circumstance. The K100 is a battlecruiser keyboard. Thankfully, Corsair has remained faithful to full-size layouts for their keyboards. Now, it's not too big for a battlecruiser, but as you would expect of any battlecruiser really, it comes with a whole bunch of features. In fact, this appears to be their flagship keyboard, currently the most expensive one they sell if I'm not mistaken, at $230, which is $30 more even than the K95 Platinum Edition. Which is a no-brainer really. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to buy that one, so forget about the K95. Instead, I'm going to compare it to some of the other contactless keyboards I've amassed so far, which is going to be far tougher competition, I can tell you. These are quite excellent. Now first let's talk about the features and the build quality, and then I'll move on to the switches. Many of the features are linked to this thing here, which you might have mistaken for a fucked up volume wheel, but it's not. That's this roller over here. Basically, the wheel does different things depending on which mode you're in, which in turn is color-coded to the button in the middle. So cyan is for increasing and decreasing backlighting brightness, like so. Then the next one, green is for track jogging, so fast forward and fast backwards. White is for previous and next track. And red is for macros. The wheel doesn't do anything here, although you can bind the wheel to do various other things as well. It's okay, but one thing to note is that you can't see what mode you're in because the RGB in the wheel quickly takes on the color of the backlighting, and it flashes the color of what it was first. So if you press it now, you might think, oh look, it's red, but actually when you let go, it turns out it's white, I think that was. It's a bit weird. I'd much have preferred it if they let it keep the color of the function instead. You know, that or... and now it's red again. Yeah, see, I just don't understand this. Anyway, I'd have much preferred it if they just used an indicator light instead. In fact, they have a huge space for it here, which is almost completely not used. Or even better, just leave the wheel off altogether, as it's not actually needed. More on that later. Now, as for the macros, that's what these 6 G buttons are here for. They're the macro keys, and dedicated ones too, so you don't need to sacrifice one of your other keys. In fact, you can't. These are the only programmable keys. Now, although you could use their software, iCUE, to program them, they provided an actual on-the-go function for it as well. To access it, make sure that you're on the red setting. Is that red? There you go, that's red. Then press it and hold it until an indicator light comes on there. Then press the G key you want to program. Let's go with G1, T, E, S, T, and then press the G key again. Simple and easy. Nice. Now, by default, it does play the macros back in real time, unfortunately, but I'm sure you can change that in the software. That said, I am quite happy that you don't need to use the software to program things in, and that it's done pretty intuitively. In fact, you don't need to have the program running or even installed at all, so they've clearly mended their ways somewhat and kept in mind now that some people don't want to have to use stupid bloatware with their keyboards. Which is a lot more than can be said for Razer, who seem hell-bent on cramming, what was it, synapse down our throat, whether we like it or not. So to reward Corsair for this, I'm going to abstain from talking about iCUE altogether. Other features include a Win key lock, which is good because Windows keys are super lame, a button for toggling between different profiles. Yes, you can have multiple profiles in this keyboard. In fact, it comes with 8 MB of onboard storage, media buttons, and a really nice volume roller. Now, for me personally, the media buttons aren't that useful because I use Winamp, and in Winamp you can have global hotkeys anyway because it's such a massively superior media player, but a volume wheel can be pretty useful, and this one is way better than the ones on their old K70 keyboards, and those were already pretty nice. It also comes with a wrist rest that's really soft and comfortable, and it latches on magnetically, like so, which is nice, but it comes up really high, so it doesn't actually work for me at all. It's because the top overhangs the keyboard considerably rather than sitting flush with it. So even though it feels really good, it's immensely in the way, I mean, for me at least. At the back it's got a set of rather weird looking cable gutters, which is nice, but it isn't for its own cable, but for things like headphones and mice. In fact, you might be very hard pressed to get its own cable in, because it's this big ass motherfucker, look at that. Now the reason it's so big is that it's got a USB pass-through port here, which is nice in theory, but I never use it, and I found that these pass-through cables, quite a lot of keyboards have these nowadays, get so thick and unpliable that they're really in the way, and because they're folded by default, they make this big spaghetti mess on your desk, and they push stuff away and they press on the buttons. It's not worth the hassle in my opinion. Cue the bit about why coiled cables are still superior. So the RGB, which has pretty decent color fidelity by the way, comes with a bunch of different color options of course, which you can customize through iCUE, but there's also a bunch of pre-programmed ones, including this one, this really interesting default one, which looks a little bit like a battle of Splatoon going on or something like that. That said, as with the K70, I found that the best thing for it is just plain red. Just suits it best in my opinion. Red really brings out the black aluminium top plate, and it just suits these keyboards very well in my opinion, and it's quite a light show. Apart from copious light bleed from under the keycaps, it's got a light ribbon in the sides here as well, see? But still, I think the old K70 looked better. Something about the shape of the case, especially this bottom bit here, just looks better in my opinion, and it's less busy, you know, a bit more elegant. And really, I don't think that wheel thing is doing it any favors. And neither is this skeletonized bit at the side here. I'll show you what I mean. It just, yeah, you know, it just looks kind of weird. Anyway, overall, it's not a bad looking keyboard though, I'd say. Font could be better, it's still rather try-hard, but at least it's not so bad as this hideous cyber font that they used to use. Speaking of the keycaps, they're double shot PBT, and they have by far the best light dispersion I've ever seen on transparent double shots. Normally this results in the legends becoming all uneven and splotchy, but it's really good on these, even the small legends like this. There are a few small niggles like the corner of this enter key here and the tiny part of the old grr key, but overall it's remarkably good. 2 thumbs up for that one. Finally, it's got a fancy termed high polling rate, whose name I've already forgotten, of as much as 4000 Hz, compared to the more standard 1000 Hz for gaming keyboards. Now, they claim that that's up to 4 times faster, asterisk, but despite saying up to and having that little asterisk there, that statement is false. It really shows they either don't know how this works or are just using marketing speak, because it's actually a lot more complicated than that. But I digress. Personally, I find this completely useless. I think even 1000 Hz is total overkill, but hey, whatever. Build quality seems pretty good. It weighs 1140 grams and it doesn't flex very much at all, which is remarkable for a full-size Plus board. Plus the top plate wraps around the sides, so they cover those as well. Plastic seems a little bit weak, but the plate protects it well enough, I think, so that's okay. Next, we come to the switches. This is what they look like. They clip out, as one would expect, because the optics are all held PCB side, so no desoldering is needed. They look very similar to Cherry MX switches, obviously, but they're fundamentally completely different. They're very smooth indeed, honestly a joy to type on. Trying it out next to a K70 with MX Reds, the difference is It's ridiculous. They make MX Red feel scratchy and bindy and just generally bleh. Honestly, the difference is so much bigger than you would imagine. So a massive improvement there. And that's the reason why I said that if you buy the MX Speed version of this keyboard, you're just missing the whole point of this thing. So smoothness wise, nothing but the highest of praise. But I've amassed some competitors in the contactless segment here, and let's see how they compare to them. Now, I should stress that smoothness-wise, even just to be counted among these is very high praise. These are all endgamers, so even coming last is quite an achievement. Now, compared to a bloody Lightstrike and a Wooting, the Opto one, not the Lekker edition, although I hope to review that one too when it comes out, the Corsair definitely wins. It's noticeably smoother. Compared to the Razer Huntsman and the SteelSeries Apex Pro, it is more difficult though. These are all so smooth that it's really difficult to feel much of a difference between the three. I'd say these three share the top spot. So it's the shared first smoothest linear switch I've ever seen, quite an achievement. But there is a problem. See, their marketing department has shot the keyboard in the foot by putting the actuation point all the way up at 1mm so that they could advertise it as X times faster than the competition. And this combined with its very light weighting means that it's way too easy to actuate the switches accidentally. Just resting your fingers on them is liable to set them off. The Razer Huntsman had this problem as well. It was even worse on that keyboard actually, I think. I'm not sure why it's less apparent on this keyboard than on the Razer. I mean, it doesn't feel stiffer at least, but whatever, it's still a major problem. I find that during gaming, I'm constantly doing things I don't want to do, such as starting to strafe or accidentally jumping or proning or whatever, and that caps lock key is the worst of all, especially because they didn't step it to prevent accidental presses. I recently started playing Tarkov and I found a major issue with such hair trigger switches there as well. See, Tarkov is an extremely tense game where often nothing happens for a very long time and you're all careful and whatnot, and then instantly out of nowhere there's shots or explosions and it just slightly startles you, but then your fingers accidentally brush everything in the vicinity and you just start proning and reloading simultaneously, and the inventory comes up, or the console or the menu, or all of them, and that really doubly seals your fate. So this constant accidental triggering is really terrible, honestly kind of ruins it. Now thankfully, unlike the Razer, it does come with MX compatible springs, so I chucked an MX green spring in the caps lock switch to kind of shut it up. But this does come at the cost of that nice lightness I like so much in these linear switches. So I think they should have just kept the actuation distance at 1.5mm. Or, even better, instead of fucking around with polling rates, implemented adjustable actuation like the Wooting and the SteelSeries have, which allows you to have the best of both worlds. Again, I can't stress enough how good of a development adjustable actuation is for linear keyboards. It honestly makes a world of difference. Now, the Corsair and SteelSeries are both $230, the Razer $200, and the Wooting is $190. So they're all quite expensive. But only the Corsair and Razer have PBT keycaps, and the Corsairs look the best. But those two don't have adjustable actuation. But only the Corsair has dedicated macro buttons, which is a nice, genuinely useful extra. So they all have something going for them. Personally, I really like being able to set my actuation distance, so for me it's still the SteelSeries. But this one has macro buttons and better keycaps, although the font is better on the SteelSeries. But then you can spring swap the Corsair and... Overall, it's a good keyboard. It holds up in its own way, even in the face of really stiff competition. Points for improvement, I'd say, include either lower or adjustable actuation as the main thing, better looking, less try-hard fonts on the keycaps, and this wheel just needs to go. Going through tracks can already be done with the media buttons, setting the brightness could be done with a single button like it could on the K70, or by just using the volume wheel, and for macros, I'd really rather just have a program button rather than this thing. This just looks ugly, and spooling through the different modes is bothersome and confusing, and it's inconsistent. And like I said, you don't need it at all. If anything, it's in the way. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.